You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
If you raise calves, you know you can't prevent stress, but you can give your calves the boost they need to rise above challenging conditions. Nurture Boost is a uniquely formulated feed additive that supports calf lung health and enhances overall immunity to elevate your calves' ability to withstand stress. Boost your calves for better performance at boostyourcalves.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in your day. Welcome to the Dairy Voice podcast by Dairy Business News. I'm Connie Kuber with Sealpro Silage Barrier Films by Agriscience. So Midwest Dairy has a new CEO. Molly Pelzer, former CEO, retired in March after 40 years at the helm. And for our listeners who might not be familiar, Midwest Dairy Association represents over 4,000 dairy farms to 41 million consumers across that region. They work on the farmers' behalf to build dairy demand by inspiring consumer confidence in dairy products and production practices. My guest today is Corey Scott, the new CEO. So welcome, Corey, to the Dairy Voice podcast.
Thank you, Connie.
We're really pleased to have you, and congratulations on your new position. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us how you got to this point in your career?
I would be happy to do so. And I have to say, as you were reading about the intro to Midwest Dairy, it continues to humble me when I think about how many dairy farmers we're representing,
right,
and how many consumers we touch. So thank you for the reminder again.
Sure.
It's good to meet you. So I come to this role with just over 15 years of food and agriculture experience. So I started my career behind the wheel of a semi. So yes, I drove a semi for a local agronomy cooperative in South Dakota directly after I graduated from the University of Minnesota. I worked for that agronomy co-op for a couple of seasons before I moved into joining Land O'Lakes. Land O'Lakes is a dairy cooperative that serves over 1,000 dairy producers, or is owned by over 1,000 dairy producers. And my time at Land O'Lakes was all over the board, but what you'll see is through the course of that, there was a thread of dairy in everything that I did. I started in their agronomy business, but very quickly moved into their animal nutrition business, where I formulated dairy diets for plants in Minnesota and Wisconsin. After a number of years in their animal nutrition business, I had some internal consulting roles that were very much business focused and business optimization related. I had the opportunity to move from that into serving our dairy members through member relations. And this is the role where I really got my hands deep into dairy and engaging with farmers on a regular basis. In that time, my focus was on on-farm business consulting and risk management. So I led the forward contracting team that we had there at Land O'Lakes, and also stood up an insurance agency to support the DRP dairy insurance when that was launched. So I got to spend quite a bit of time on the business side of dairy operations through that role. My most recent and last role at Land O'Lakes was spent on the sustainability side of the equation. In this job, I had the opportunity to get exposure to a number of multinational, international CPGs, so consumer packaged goods, and food and beverage companies that use dairy product in their finished goods on the shelf. I work closely with them to understand their sustainability goals. And something that's unique to food and beverage is that the majority of sustainability footprint, emissions footprint, goes all the way back to the farm gate. It was critical that I work closely with dairy farmers on how they were managing their operation in a way that was economically feasible for them, but also had positive environmental impact. And I acted as the bridge between those international companies with sustainability goals and the farmers that were doing the hard work at the farm gate to help them achieve those goals.
When your goal is to help animals reach their full potential, health matters. Diamond V offers a fresh perspective on animal health, a perspective that supports gut health, strengthens immunity, and ultimately enhances performance. For those who choose to invest in keeping healthy animals healthy, feeding Diamond V makes a statement about another dimension of profit, where margins are measured by confidence in your future. To get a fresh perspective, visit diamondv.com, because animal health deserves a healthier approach.
I appreciate the definition you gave of sustainability as to it. It has to make sense for everyone.
It does. It does, especially having the lens that I have now, having worked on both sides of the equation. It's so easy to have conflicting goals. And you won't see success on either side of the equation if we reside in that space.
So that brought you to Midwest Dairy.
It did. I left Land O'Lakes and I worked for an ag tech startup that was right in that sustainability wheelhouse. So I worked with more food and beverage companies, and I worked with all of the major processors in the US and their farmers to do the same work on a bigger scale. The Midwest Dairy CEO opportunity came about late this last fall. And it was completely a surprise. Someone sent it to me, texted me and said, "Hey, you should look at this." And I texted back and said, "You're absolutely bananas. No, you're qualified. You should look." So I did. I took a look. What I saw when I saw the job description was this perfect marriage between all of the business experience and acumen that I had developed, my on-farm knowledge, and my desire and passion to support the people of an industry that I love. You don't find better people than you do in dairy and agriculture as a general whole. So it really culminated in what I would call, there's no perfect role, but this is pretty darn close.
Ah, very good. I gave just a very brief description of what Midwest Dairy does. And because we have some listeners that aren't familiar with the association, can you tell us more about what Midwest Dairy does?
Absolutely. So I think it would be helpful if we take a step back and just talk about Dairy Checkoff for a moment. Midwest Dairy is a regional checkoff organization. So we serve a very specific geographic region that spans 10 states. But there is a greater US Dairy Checkoff organization. And we share the goal of increasing dairy sales and dairy consumption. Our sole purpose is to market dairy product unbranded on behalf of the farmers that are creating it. So really a cool objective, right? I get to be in this space of not having dedication to one brand or another. So the overarching goal of Dairy Checkoff is to increase consumption and increase sales of dairy product. So when you look at Midwest Dairy, we are the regional organization that serves that purpose. We do that through a number of different mechanisms, some of which we'll talk about today. But ultimately, you'll see in our strategic plan at Midwest Dairy that we have 3 business objectives. The first one is that increased sales. That's always going to be there. But to increase sales, we have to understand our consumer base. And what we're understanding about the consumer base that is growing up as we speak, Gen Z and some of the other groups that will have purchasing power in the future, we're learning that there's more room to build trust in dairy. So you'll see that our second strategic objective, business objective, is to build trust in dairy. And we're doing that through different mechanisms to reach those consumers where they are, because they receive information in a very different manner than you and I probably do, Connie, right?
Right.
Building trust is the second pillar. The third one is, in order to stay ahead of the ball and really keep our eye on what consumers are seeking, how they want to consume their dairy, it requires research and innovation. So we work with and through partners to conduct and increase research and innovation in dairy. So through innovation, through building trust, we're working towards that increased sales and increased consumption goal.
As the CEO, then, what are your top priorities?
My role as CEO ultimately is to have stewardship over how we are deploying checkoff funds. Checkoff funds come from our farmers. So it is my responsibility to ensure that how we're utilizing those funds aligns closely with those strategic objectives that you and I have discussed. And any activity that we're doing with those funds, I need to be able to show the return on that investment from our farmers. So what you'll see from me this year is you're going to see me asking a lot of questions of why. I didn't grow up in checkoff. I grew up in, business and dairy from that perspective, but I was not involved in checkoff early in my career. So I have a lot of questions on why and how we do things. And this, I think, is critically important now, even more so than maybe some other times because of some of the economic crunch that dairy farmers are experiencing today. So it's even more critically important that I have that good stewardship over their funds and how they're utilized and can point to the return of how those funds are being deployed. So you're going to see me asking a lot of questions of why, how, can we do this differently? Should we be doing it differently? So my objectives for this year are to just really be embedded in checkoff and understand more so that I can be the best steward of those funds.
Once you have learned what and understood what your association and the responsibilities that you have, which I think is super, because great that you're looking and asking questions and understanding what your whole role is and how that can be beneficial to all your dairy farmers. That's super. So how do you plan to build upon the success that Midwest Dairy has had?
I'm surrounded by an incredibly talented staff. I'm very fortunate. They worked really hard last year to build a strategic plan in partnership with the farmers that support checkoff. And that strategic plan, which we just talked about, 3 of the objectives of, really reflects the desires of our farmers and our staff and the pathways that they'll be doing work. What I'm excited about is those are things that are foundational to our work, but my staff is taking a creative approach. And sometimes this is challenging for farmers because they'd like to see checkoff in their local communities. But the reality is the consumer base that we're targeting, we have to pull our heads up a little bit more and look at the landscape, and they're a little bit further out. They're not necessarily our neighbors, right? So what I'm particularly excited about is my staff is really looking at how do we meet consumers where they are. And so that's going to take the form of some innovative things like leveraging social media influencers to start to build trust in dairy, specifically in sustainability and animal care. That's going to look like showing up on college campuses in a different way. That's going to look like leveraging grocers and quick stop gas stations in a different way. So I'm most excited about the innovation that I'm seeing coming from my team to deploy against strategies that feel familiar and common. It's how we deploy that makes the difference. So I'm really, really excited to see some of the things that they have planned for this year.
I know that the structure of Midwest Dairy, there are several boards from different states. Can you talk about that and how those people give direction to that creative staff?
I think what's unique is I report to the chair and I report to the boards as the CEO of Midwest Dairy. So our chair is Charles Kraus out of Minnesota. Charles is also part of what we call the division board. So we have a corporate board where Charles is chair and there's a representative from each division of Midwest Dairy on that corporate board. I report to them. The staff of Midwest Dairy reports to me. So I act as that funnel, that feedback funnel between the two entities. So the corporate board has representation from each of the divisions. Each of the division boards are comprised of 1 or 2 states, quite typically, and they are a smaller board that governs their farmer activity in each of those individual states, in some instances 1 or 2 states. Division boards each have a representative that comes into the corporate board. Corporate board has a chair. I report to him. So that's the structure from the governance side of the equation. The boards have the opportunity to provide to us feedback and recommendations and their desires. I am the only one that has to report to them as far as if we are doing or not doing something that they give us direction on. I'm very fortunate because our board trusts myself and our staff to deploy against those things that we think, not even that we think, but that research and other insights have shown us will be most effective in the marketplace. We're very, very fortunate to have that confidence from them. And it is my job to make sure that they understand that the work we're doing is to meet their needs, but maybe not in the places they would have expected.
Things have changed.
Yeah, things have changed. The objectives of checkoff haven't changed, but where we're meeting people, how we're getting to them, vehicles and the language we use and the things that they are comfortable and familiar with can be very different than what the farmers we serve are comfortable with.
Sure.
So it's balancing that, right? It's balancing expectations and what truly resonates at the consumer end of the equation.
Then what is your vision for the future of Midwest Dairy?
My vision for the future of Midwest Dairy is to keep our eye on the horizon. And here's what I mean by that. So often we get deeply embedded in the communities with which we reside in, and it can be hard to pull our heads up out of those communities and look at what's happening around us. When I think about the future of Midwest Dairy, I want Midwest Dairy to elevate themselves in such a way where we're looking at the landscape of what's happening in dairy across the globe, providing ourselves the opportunity to be ahead of the ball. We want to be where the ball is going. That's going to take effort. That being here at the Dairy Export Council is a good example of a way where we can stay ahead of the ball. That's understanding what's happening and evolving in global markets that could eventually impact us domestically and at home. So staying ahead of those issues and opportunities that are coming down the pipeline for dairy as a general whole is a space where I want us at Midwest Dairy to really think about being more active in. My future for Midwest Dairy, the vision is bright. It's exciting. It's serving our 10-state region with an eye for the future.
Have you run out of silage? Had to buy expensive, marked up feed to fill the gap? Maybe production's dropped due to lower dry matter intakes. Are molds or mycotoxins creeping through your piles or bunkers? And pitching the rot is a dangerous pain. Oxygen is the enemy. Pack it out, then keep it out with Sealpro, the professional grade silage barrier film protection chosen by top professional farmers like you. Make more, better, safer silage with Sealpro. Learn more at sealprosilage.com.
Now, you had mentioned earlier about research and innovation. Does Midwest Dairy get involved in, say, new product research and development?
Great question. Midwest Dairy has an entity called the Midwest Dairy Foods Research Center. What we will do is we will get involved in research and innovation of new products and technology through and with partners. So what you won't see is a Midwest Dairy branded new product, for example. But we support research that then can be shared with processors and cooperatives and other entities that can bring a commercial product to the marketplace.
I see.
Yes, we are very intentional about serving processors in this way. We share a lot of research with processors, and they have the power to decide what to do with it, right? But we want to make sure that that research is continuing. So through partnerships, we will conduct research and do innovation.
You also had talked about building trust in dairy, and I understand that's from the consumer side, but how do you plan on engaging with the farmers in your role in your area of Midwest Dairy, and what should they expect from you?
Me personally, in the upcoming months, I will be spending time in each of the states and each of the division boards that I shared with you earlier. So we have those boards that govern each state in our geographical area, and they have a series of summer board meetings coming up. So I will be boots on the ground with them for all of those board meetings, and also meeting some of the farmers in each of those states of our region. So that's me personally. I'm excited to meet people in person. Also, again, this is going down the vein of how do we stay ahead of the ball? It sounds really silly, but I have a Facebook page, and I would love to engage with our Midwest dairy farmers through that page. It gives a behind the scenes of what's happening at Midwest Dairy. I post pictures and insights that I'm learning at events like I'm at this week. And so I would love to engage with farmers in that way. So they'll see me in person, but they can also see me regularly digitally should they choose. From a Midwest Dairy perspective, we do have a number of leadership and development opportunities for our farmers. One thing that I've been sharing, and I should have shared this earlier as one of my strategic objectives personally that you'll see me talk about, is farmers have a superpower when it comes to influencing consumers. And their superpower is their voice.
Yes.
It's the stories that they can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Consumers trust farmers. They want to hear more from them. They may never have the opportunity to touch a cow or speak directly to a farmer, but we can sure simulate some of those things through digital media. And when I'm talking about farmers leveraging their superpower and their voice, I'm not talking about high production, things that you would see, movies that you might see. I am talking about the simplicity of Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. You will see Midwest dairy farmers engaging in that way more in 2024, but that doesn't come naturally to a lot of farmers. So we also have developed a couple things to help our farmers become more comfortable with that type of engagement. So we have a training called Breaking Through the Noise. And if farmers are interested, they can find all of this on our Midwest Dairy website. Breaking Through the Noise talks about specifically how to tell your story. All about storytelling. So if you ever wanted to become a storyteller, even if you didn't, there's an opportunity to develop that side of you that you may not have known existed. Reaching into our younger crowd, we also have our DEAL program, which is Dairy Experience and Ag Leadership. So that's to develop our young leaders, future leaders,
Mm-hmm.
I should say, our young farmers into future leaders. May that be leadership with Midwest Dairy or with their processor or cooperative, for example. But it's a small cohort of young farmers, and we equip them with leadership skills that they may not be obtaining elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple different ways that we're reaching into the farmer base from a different perspective to help develop and build our farmers as great storytellers and as leaders.
As a little girl growing up in Minnesota myself on a dairy farm, I just have to ask, will the Princess K program continue to be as large as it is?
As long as we have candidates showing up to be Princess K will continue.
Right.
That is
great
such
news.
a long-standing, yes. I mean, I knew nothing. Moving to Minnesota, I knew nothing. But after I had attended my first state fair, I was driving in a vehicle with a fellow coworker from Land O'Lakes, and she says, "Do you know I was Princess K?"
Ooh.
And I went, "Holy cow, I didn't know what that meant until I went to the state fair this year, but those butterheads." So I felt like I was in a vehicle with a celebrity.
Absolutely.
And that's somebody that is coming into dairy, had no sense of what dairy was. And she was already an idol to me. So I have to imagine that impact is similar for others that are outside of the dairy world, right? So those princesses and ambassadors are incredibly important to us.
Very good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Our farmers, I would love to see our Midwest dairy farmers leverage their superpowers more. We want to hear their voice. We want to help facilitate that and sharing their stories to the consumers. Anything we can do in that space, we want to do. Nobody tells their story better than them.
Exactly.
They want to hear what's going on behind the closed farm gate.
Right. Right.
They want to know.
Well, good. It's been a pleasure to introduce you to the dairy industry. If our listeners want to know more, You talked about your Facebook page. What should they search for? Is it Midwest Dairy?
They can search for Corey Scott.
Okay.
And they will see a Midwest Dairy CEO profile with my name leading.
Okay. And just to be clear, your name is spelled Corey, and then
Yes.
Scott's Scott. And the Midwest Dairy webpage, what is that?
Very simple, midwestdairy.com.
There you go, midwestdairy.com. Well, good. All right. Well, thank you. We've been talking to Corey Scott, who, as I said, is the new CEO of Midwest Dairy Association. This is Connie Kuber with Sealpro Silage Barrier Film by Connor Agriscience. You've been listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News. Thanks for subscribing, liking, and sharing this podcast, and I will see you again very soon.